Our next question is from Campbell Faulkner, the current CSU Vice President for Student Affairs, and this is just for the Vice President for Student Affairs candidates. Furthering the strategic initiative of representative commitment, how will you specifically enhance and better the focus and expertise of the representative body? We'll begin with Mr. Rich.
I think this goes back to what I answered with one of the questions earlier with, and that I think the first and foremost thing we need to do in better engaging our representative body is increasing the training and the education of our representatives. First of all, we need to make sure that our representatives are properly going out and knowing what kind of issues to look for on campus, knowing how we can offer student organizations and students aid and whether it be financial or through policies. We need to make sure that our representatives really understand that part of our mission statement. We also need to make sure that they understand the workings of our committee structure and really our entire legislative structure as a whole. A lot of work, I know I personally, when I was kind of thrown into the mix of CSU, I felt that a lot of the training was very rushed and that I kind of had to figure out on my own how the committee structure really worked and how we actually went about passing policies and making sure that we stood up for the student voice. And finally, the last point is that I think we overall need to strengthen student legislation and make that when CSU has an issue, has a stance on an issue, or even when there's an issue present on campus, CSU needs to make sure we are consistently passing legislation that is on record and presented to administration on what CSU feels the students would want. And as we're forming this legislation, we need to make sure that our representatives are better reaching out to students through a couple of different facets. One, opening our meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Rich. Mr. Anchin?
You know, when I look at this question, I really want to take responsibility at this position for how we can truly make this better. And I think it honestly starts off in the beginning with figuring out how we can best tell students what CSU is and what it does. And I think if we can get that across, that will honestly help the representative, it'll help the students know what CSU does and how and who wants to run for the representative position. I think unless students know what CSU does, there's no reason for them to run for a representative position, and they may be a fully qualified person who is truly interested in this position. So I think that's where it starts off first, is incorporating something into Welcome Week, where we're working with the Welcome Week coordinators or a summer preview to tell them about CSU, the organization, and what we do in funding student organizations. So I think once we start there, then we have an informed student body, that we have informed candidates who are approaching these representative positions. I think then from there it goes on to incorporating them into that and telling them what their duties are and keeping them accountable. I think that's a key word, accountability. And if we are truly keeping them accountable, then I think we can start setting goals and working with them to make those goals actually happen. But honestly, it starts at the top with the executive body. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Anchin. Rebuttal, Mr. Rich.
Well, I feel that the training at the beginning of the year and, like Rajiv said, getting a jump start with the student body is one of the most important things we can do. I think there's also two very important things we can continue to do throughout the term and throughout the year with our representatives. First of all, I'd like to see weekly meetings held between me and the committee chairs, as well as maybe monthly meetings with all of the representatives on a one-on-one basis to really talk about what they're hearing with students, talk about what ideas they have that maybe they either haven't been able to really stand up and express, or that they've kind of been looking to really gauge if it's actually something that's practical. And I think with that, we really need to make sure that our representatives are better supported throughout their terms, because based on pure numbers, the representatives are by far the most powerful way for CSU to reach out to students and to communicate with students. So we need to make sure that all of our representatives are better supported.
Thank you, Mr. Rich. Our next question is for all I
believe I get to rebuttal.
You,
Is that okay?
Yep. Rebuttal, Mr. Anchin.
Thank you. So in responding to that, You know what? I think that the committee chairs and the people, the representatives that have been appointed as committee chairs within CSU should be doing these things already. And so if you have been or you are a committee chair, that should be something that you're doing, is having a weekly meeting. There's no doubt about that. I think even this last summer, the current vice president of student affairs and the committee chairs got together and discussed different ideas as far as recycling and where we want to see different things go. So I think that that is something that already is in progress. I think that a big thing, which is really interesting, is with the 5-year strategic plan, we've set up something called Building the Brand, which I've been put in charge of. And I think that right there in itself is reaching out to the students, and it's starting with the top. It's starting with reconstructing those committees and then going from there. So.
Thank you, Mr. Anshin.